The scream echoed through the marble foyer of the Sullivan estate like a knife cutting through silk. "Sign these now!" Catherine Sullivan stood 8 months pregnant, her hand instinctively moving to protect the swell of her belly as her mother-in-law's voice reverberated off the vaulted ceilings. Patricia Sullivan held a folder of papers in her perfectly manicured hands, her face twisted with a rage so pure it looked almost rehearsed. Behind Patricia stood Catherine's husband. Ex-husband, she reminded herself, though the papers weren't even signed yet. Marcus Sullivan, 34 years old, Vice President of Operations at Sullivan Technologies, the family company. The same company where Catherine had met him 6 years ago when she was a junior analyst, fresh out of business school. Next to Marcus, wearing a cream-colored dress that screamed replacement, stood Simone Laurent, 27, sleek and polished like a weapon designed specifically to cut. She worked in Marcus's department. She'd been to their home for dinner parties. She'd congratulated Catherine on her pregnancy at the company holiday party just 4 months ago, her hand lingering on Catherine's shoulder with what Catherine now recognized as false sympathy. "Catherine, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Patricia's voice dropped to that controlled fury that was somehow worse than the screaming. "You've embarrassed this family long enough. Sign the papers and leave with whatever dignity you have left." 8 months pregnant. Catherine's hands trembled as she looked down at the divorce papers Marcus had served her with 3 days ago. 3 days after her grandmother's funeral. 3 days after she'd buried the only family member who'd ever truly loved her. The papers sat on the entryway table between them, like a bomb waiting to detonate. "I just need time to read them," Catherine said, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her throat. "My lawyer." "Your lawyer?" Patricia laughed, sharp and cruel. "The court-appointed one who barely passed the bar?" "Catherine, dear, stop embarrassing yourself. Marcus has the best attorneys money can buy, and they've already ensured you'll get exactly what you deserve." "Which is nothing." Marcus shifted his weight, his jaw tight. For just a moment, Catherine thought she saw guilt flicker across his face. The face she'd kissed on their wedding day. The face she'd woken up next to for 6 years. The face that now looked at her like she was a stranger he'd never quite liked. "Marcus?" Catherine tried, directing her words to him, bypassing his mother. "Can we please talk privately? About the baby, about—" "There's nothing to discuss," Simone interrupted, her voice honey-sweet with an edge of triumph. "Marcus and I have already made plans. We're moving forward together. And honestly, Catherine, you should be grateful. Look at yourself." Catherine knew what Simone saw. What they all saw. A woman who'd gained 60 pounds with pregnancy, swollen ankles, dark circles under her eyes from nights spent crying after her grandmother's death, hair that hadn't been styled in weeks. She wore a stretched maternity dress from Target, the same one she'd been wearing for 3 days because she was too exhausted to care. Simone, by contrast, was immaculate. 5'8", blonde highlights perfectly maintained, designer heels, a figure that screamed personal trainer and controlled portions. Everything Catherine used to be before pregnancy, before Marcus started working late every night, before the slow erosion of her marriage had left her too tired to fight. "The joint account," Catherine said, her mind grasping for practical matters because emotion would break her completely. "I need access to—" "Already handled?" Patricia interrupted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus transferred those funds this morning. $22,000. Consider it a wedding gift for his new beginning." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. $22,000. Their savings. The money she'd carefully set aside for the baby, for emergencies, for the future she'd thought they were building together. That's illegal, Catherine whispered. That's theft. It's practical, Patricia corrected. Marcus earned that money. You contributed nothing to this family except the embarrassment of your presence. Now sign the papers. Take the settlement we're offering, which is generous considering your lack of value, and leave. She'd get nothing. Less than nothing. She'd be a single mother with a newborn, no job. She'd left her position at the company when she got pregnant per Patricia's request. No savings, and no way to afford the childcare she'd need to work again. What if I don't sign? Catherine heard herself ask. The room went silent. Even Simone's satisfied smile faltered. Patricia's eyes narrowed to slits. Then you'll discover exactly how difficult I can make your life. I have attorneys on retainer who specialize in making problems disappear. And you, Catherine, are a problem. Mother's right, Marcus said, speaking for the first time since Catherine arrived at the estate for what he'd called an important family meeting. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign, and we can all move forward. Forward. As if the past 6 years meant nothing. As if the baby currently kicking against Catherine's ribs meant nothing. Catherine looked around the Sullivan estate, this monument to old money and older cruelty. The home where she'd spent countless awkward Christmases trying to win Patricia's approval. Where she'd endured passive-aggressive comments about her modest background, her state school education, her ambitions above her station. Her eyes landed on a silver-framed photograph on the side table. Marcus and Patricia at some charity gala, both dressed impeccably, both smiling that practiced Sullivan smile. And in the background, barely visible, was Catherine, cropped almost entirely out of the frame. That's what she'd always been to them. Background noise, easily cropped out. I need 24 hours, Catherine said finally. To have my lawyer review. You have 30 minutes, Patricia snapped. Sign now, or I'll have security escort you from the premises, and Marcus will file a motion claiming you're mentally unstable. 8 months pregnant, recently lost a family member, acting erratically. The court will eat it up. You'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Catherine's hand moved to the pen on the table. Her fingers wrapped around it. She looked at Marcus one more time, searching for the man she'd married, the man who'd promised to love her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. But that man was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. She picked up the pen, and her phone buzzed in her pocket. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, unknown number. She almost ignored it. But something made her pull the phone out, made her look at the screen. Urgent. Call regarding Margaret Chen estate. Time sensitive. Harrison and Associates, legal Margaret Chen, her grandmother. Catherine's heart stuttered. The funeral had been 3 days ago. Her grandmother's will had been read by a local attorney who'd simply said, "Everything has been left to you, Catherine. We'll be in touch with details." She'd been too grief-stricken to ask questions. Too focused on the fact that Marcus had refused to attend the funeral, claiming a crucial business meeting. Too numb to process anything beyond the fact that the only person who'd ever truly loved her was gone. 30 minutes starts now, Patricia said, tapping her diamond-encrusted watch. Catherine looked at the phone, then at the papers, then at the 3 people watching her like vultures waiting for roadkill to stop twitching. I need to take this call, Catherine said quietly. Absolutely not, Patricia snapped. Sign first, then. It's about my grandmother's estate. It's legal. It's urgent. Catherine met Patricia's eyes with something she hadn't felt in months. Steel. I'll be back in 5 minutes. She turned and walked toward the powder room off the foyer before anyone could stop her. Once inside, she locked the door, her hands shaking as she dialed the number. It rang twice. Harrison and Associates, this is Robert Harrison speaking. This is Catherine Sullivan. I received an urgent message about my grandmother's estate. A pause. Then, Mrs. Sullivan, yes. Thank you for calling back so quickly. I apologize for the urgency, but there are time-sensitive matters that require your immediate attention regarding your inheritance. My grandmother lived modestly, Catherine said, her voice tight with grief and confusion. I don't understand what could be so urgent about Mrs. Sullivan, Robert Harrison interrupted gently. Your grandmother left you approximately $5.3 billion in assets, including controlling shares of Chen Industries, one of the largest privately held technology conglomerates in the world. We need to meet today, immediately, if possible. The phone slipped from Catherine's hand, clattering into the sink. $5.3 billion. Chen Industries. Her grandmother, Margaret Chen, who'd lived in a modest apartment in Queens, who'd clipped coupons and worn the same coat for 20 years, who'd worked as a bookkeeper her entire life. Catherine picked up the phone with trembling hands. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Your grandmother's estate is valued at $5.3 billion, Mrs. Sullivan, and according to her explicit instructions, we need to meet with you today before you sign any legal documents. She left very specific protocols in place should certain circumstances arise. I believe those circumstances have now occurred. Through the bathroom door, Catherine heard Patricia's voice raised again. Catherine, your 5 minutes are up. Sign these papers now! Catherine stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. Swollen, exhausted, 8 months pregnant, about to sign away her future for $500 a month. And she owned $5 billion. She owned $5 billion. The woman staring back at her in the mirror looked the same. But everything had just changed. Mr. Harrison, Catherine said, her voice suddenly steady, I can meet you in 1 hour. There's something I need to handle first. Catherine took 3 steadying breaths, her hand pressed against the cool marble of the bathroom sink. Through the door, Patricia's voice had taken on that edge that meant she was losing control, something Catherine had never seen in 6 years of marriage. Catherine, this is ridiculous. Get out here and sign these papers. But Catherine wasn't the same woman who'd walked through that door 20 minutes ago. That woman had believed she was worthless, powerless, desperate. That woman was prepared to sign away her future for scraps. That woman had just died. In her place stood someone who owned $5.3 billion. Someone who owned, she'd need to confirm this, but the pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. Controlling shares of Chen Industries. The same Chen Industries that had acquired Sullivan Technologies in a hostile takeover 3 years ago. The acquisition Marcus's family had fought desperately, spending millions in legal fees, only to lose in the end. Catherine owned Sullivan Technologies. She owned the company Marcus worked for. The company Patricia held over everyone's head like a sword. The company that had defined the Sullivan family legacy for 3 generations. She owned it. The realization hit her so hard, she had to grip the sink to stay upright. Her grandmother, quiet, coupon-clipping Margaret Chen, had walked away from a fortune 30 years ago after Catherine's grandfather died. She'd chosen to live, simply to raise Catherine's mother in modest circumstances, to work as a bookkeeper while sitting on billions of dollars. And she'd left it all to Catherine, her only granddaughter. The pregnant woman currently being screamed at in a mansion she apparently owned. Catherine looked at herself in the mirror one more time. Swollen face, exhausted eyes, cheap maternity dress. Let them keep thinking that's all she was. She unlocked the bathroom door and walked back into the foyer. Patricia, Marcus and Simone turned to her with identical expressions of irritation. "Finally," Patricia snapped. "Now sign these papers before—" "No," Catherine said quietly. The word landed like a grenade. "Excuse me?" Patricia's voice was dangerously soft. "I said no. I'm not signing them. Not today." Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed with anger Catherine recognized from arguments past. "Catherine, stop being difficult. This is happening whether you cooperate or not. The only question is whether you do it with the small amount of dignity you have left, or whether we drag you through court and destroy you publicly." "Drag me through court?" Catherine said, meeting his eyes. "I'll take my chances." Simone laughed, that practiced, tinkling sound that made Catherine's skin crawl. "With what money exactly? Marcus controls your accounts. You're 8 months pregnant with no job. You think any lawyer will take your case? You'll be lucky to afford a public defender." "Then I'll afford a public defender," Catherine said. She picked up her purse from the table where she'd set it, tucked her phone into her pocket, and turned toward the door. "Where do you think you're going?" Patricia's voice rose to a shriek. "Security! Stop her!" 2 men in suits appeared from the hallway. Catherine recognized them. Thompson and Rodriguez, the estate security team. Men who'd nodded politely to her at family gatherings for 6 years. "Mrs. Sullivan," Thompson said uncomfortably. "Mrs. Patricia Sullivan has requested—" "That's Mrs. Catherine Sullivan," Catherine interrupted, her voice calm. "And I'm leaving. If you physically restrain me, that's assault. I'm sure your employer wouldn't want that liability." The men looked at each other, then at Patricia, uncertain. "Let her go," Marcus said tiredly. "She can't hide forever. We'll serve her through her court-appointed attorney. This just makes everything harder for her in the end." Patricia's face was purple with rage, but she nodded curtly. "Fine. Run, Catherine. See how far you get with no money, no home, and no options. You'll be begging to sign within the week." Catherine walked to the door, her hand on the ornate brass handle. Then she paused, turned back. "One question," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "When did the affair start?" Simone's hand found Marcus's arm possessively. Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That's not relevant," he said. "Humor me." 18 months ago, Simone answered instead, her smile sharp. "Right after the company retreat. He realized what he'd been missing, being trapped with you." 18 months. Catherine was 5 months pregnant at the time. She'd been showing, exhausted, excited about the baby. She'd come home from doctor's appointments, glowing, wanting to share ultrasound pictures, and Marcus had been sleeping with Simone. "Thank you for the honesty," Catherine said. "That'll be useful in the discovery phase of the divorce." She walked out of the Sullivan estate into the cold November afternoon. The door closed behind her with a definitive click. Her car, the modest Toyota Marcus had allowed her to keep after she'd stopped working, was parked in the circular driveway, dwarfed by Patricia's Mercedes and Marcus's BMW. Catherine slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and only then allowed herself to shake. $5.3 billion. Chen Industries. She owned them. She owned everything they'd just used to threaten her with. Her phone buzzed. Robert Harrison. "Mrs. Sullivan, are you available to meet?" "Yes," Catherine said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Text me the address. I'll be there in 30 minutes. "One more thing," Harrison said. "Before we meet, I need to ask, have you signed any legal documents today? Any papers presented by your husband or his family?" "No." I refused. A long exhale on the other end. "Thank God. Your grandmother's instructions were very clear on this point. If you'd signed before we met, would have complicated things significantly. We'll explain everything when you arrive. Come to the 40th floor. Ask for me by name. And Mrs. Sullivan? Yes? Congratulations. Your grandmother loved you very much. What she built for you. The line disconnected. Catherine sat in her car outside the Sullivan estate, her hands on the steering wheel, her baby kicking gently against her ribs. She looked up at the mansion in the rear-view mirror, all that stone and glass and old money arrogance. And she smiled. Let them think they'd won. Let them celebrate. Let Patricia plan how she'd spend the next 18 years lording this over Catherine. Let Marcus and Simone plan their perfect new life together. Let them. Catherine shifted the car into drive and pulled away from the estate, leaving the Sullivans behind in every sense of the word. She had a meeting with destiny. The offices of Harrison and Associates occupied the entire 40th floor of the Morrison Tower in downtown Manhattan. Catherine stepped out of the elevator into a reception area that screamed quiet power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture in cream and chrome, abstract art that probably cost more than Catherine's annual salary had been. A young woman at the reception desk looked up and smiled warmly. Mrs. Sullivan? Yes. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. Right this way. They walked down a hallway lined with photographs. Catherine slowed, looking at them. Tech companies, boardrooms, deals being signed. And in several of them, partially in the background, was a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair. Her grandmother. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Sullivan is here. Robert Harrison stood from behind a massive mahogany desk. He was 63, Catherine guessed, with silver hair and sharp eyes that assessed her with professional precision. He crossed the office with his hand extended. Mrs. Sullivan, thank you for coming so quickly. His handshake was firm, warm. Catherine sank into the leather chair he indicated, her pregnancy making the simple act of sitting both relief and discomfort. I apologize for the cryptic message, Harrison began, returning to his seat. But your grandmother's instructions were very specific. I've been managing Margaret Chen's affairs for 23 years, and I've never had a client as brilliant or as careful as she was. I don't understand, Catherine said. My grandmother worked as a bookkeeper. She lived in a small apartment. She clipped coupons. How could she possibly have billions of dollars? Harrison's smile was sad and proud simultaneously. Your grandmother was one of the most remarkable women I've ever known. And she spent 30 years making sure no one knew exactly how remarkable she was. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder, thick, leather-bound, with Catherine's name embossed on the front. In 1965, Harrison began, your grandmother's father founded Chen Electronics. Small operation at first, making components for radio manufacturers. By 1975, they'd expanded into computer chips. By 1985, Chen Electronics was one of the top 5 technology component manufacturers in the world. Catherine listened, her hands folded over her belly, her mind racing. Your grandmother was groomed to take over the business. She was brilliant. MIT at 16, double major in electrical engineering and business. By 22, she was revolutionizing manufacturing processes that are still industry standard today. By 25, she was CFO of a company worth $400 million. I never knew, Catherine whispered. She didn't want you to, Harrison said gently, when she met your grandfather, Thomas Chen, in 1987. It was love at first sight, according to everyone who knew them. They married in 1988. Your mother was born in 1990. Harrison paused, his expression darkening. In 1992, there was an accident, a manufacturing facility explosion. Thomas was overseeing an expansion project and was killed instantly. Your grandmother was 30 years old, a widow with a 2-year-old daughter, running a company worth $800 million. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. Her grandmother had never spoken about her grandfather's death in detail. Just an accident a long time ago. Your grandmother blamed herself, Harrison continued. The facility, the expansion, it was her project, her design, her ambition that put Thomas there that day. She was devastated, and in her grief she made a decision that shocked the entire business world. He pulled out a newspaper clipping from 1993. The headline read, "Chen heiress walks away from fortune." She put all her assets into an irrevocable trust, appointed a board of trustees to manage Chen Electronics, and walked away. She took your mother to New York, enrolled her in public school, got a job as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm, and disappeared from public life. But the money, Catherine started. Kept growing, Harrison finished. The trust was brilliantly structured. The board managed the company, made strategic decisions, pursued acquisitions. Chen Electronics became Chen Industries in 2001. They acquired Sullivan Technologies in a hostile takeover 3 years ago. Catherine's breath caught. Harrison's eyes gleamed with something like satisfaction. Yes, your grandmother owned Sullivan Technologies, owns it through the trust, and now you own it. Marcus doesn't know. No one knows. The acquisition went through a dozen shell companies and holding structures. The Sullivan family fought it, spent millions trying to block it, never knowing they were fighting Margaret Chen's legacy. Your grandmother found it poetic. Catherine's mind was reeling. Why? Why did she hide all this? Because she was protecting you, Harrison said simply. He opened the leather folder and pulled out a handwritten letter. She left you this. She wrote it 6 months ago when she first received her terminal diagnosis. Catherine's hands shook as she took the letter. The paper was heavy, expensive. Her grandmother's handwriting, careful, precise, full of love. My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I wanted to meet your baby, watch you become the mother I know you'll be. But life doesn't always give us what we want. It gives us what we need to become who we're meant to be. By now, Robert has told you about the money, about Chen Industries, about the life I walked away from. You're probably confused, maybe angry that I kept this from you. Let me explain. When your grandfather died, I thought my ambition killed him. I thought success demanded too high a price. So I walked away, and I raised your mother in modest circumstances, wanting to protect her from the pressure and scrutiny that comes with wealth. But I was wrong, Catherine. Success didn't kill Thomas. An accident did. A terrible random accident that would have happened whether I was running a multi-billion-dollar company or working at a grocery store. I let guilt reshape my entire life. And in doing so, I taught your mother to be afraid of ambition, to play small, to apologize for wanting more. Your mother passed that fear to you. I watched you marry Marcus Sullivan, watched you shrink yourself to fit into his family's expectations, watched you apologize for being brilliant and ambitious. And I saw myself in you, a woman with extraordinary potential, dimming her own light because she'd been taught that wanting more was dangerous. I won't make that mistake with you again. The money I'm leaving you isn't just money. It's freedom. It's power. It's the ability to choose yourself without apology. The trust I created 30 years ago was always meant for you. I've been watching, waiting, knowing that someday you'd need it. I've watched the Sullivan family. Patricia's cruel manipulation, Marcus's weakness, the way they've systematically stripped away your confidence and self-worth. I've watched and documented everything, waiting for the moment they'd overplay their hand. If you're reading this letter, that moment has come. In this folder, you'll find everything you need. Evidence of financial manipulation, infidelity, conspiracy to defraud. Your husband's affair with Simone Laurent has been documented by private investigators for 18 months. Patricia's attempts to isolate you, control you, and ultimately destroy you are all recorded. But more importantly, you'll find your power. You own Sullivan Technologies. You own the company Marcus works for. The company his family built their entire identity around. They don't know this. They think they answer to faceless shareholders and a board of directors. They have no idea those directors answer to you. Use this knowledge wisely, Catherine. Not for revenge. Revenge is expensive and pointless. Use it for justice. Use it to protect yourself and your baby. Use it to show them that the woman they tried to break is unbreakable. Remember, the Chen women don't shatter. We bend under pressure, yes, but we never break. And when the pressure releases, we spring back stronger than before. I love you, Catherine. I've always loved you. And I'm sorry I waited so long to give you this. I thought I was protecting you by keeping you away from wealth and power. But I was wrong. The protection isn't in having less. It's in knowing your worth. Walk into your future with your head high. And when they try to make you small, remember, you own the world they think they control. Show them what a Chen woman is made of. All my love. Grandmother Catherine finished reading through tears streaming down her face. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling her baby kick, feeling the weight of love and power and responsibility settle over her like armor. There's more, Harrison said gently, giving her a moment to compose herself. He pulled out additional documents. Your grandmother didn't just leave you money. She left you a strategic plan. He spread papers across the desk. Catherine leaned forward, eyes scanning. She anticipated that the Sullivans would move against you when she died. Patricia specifically. Your grandmother knew Patricia would see your grief as weakness, would use the opportunity to drive you out of the family before you inherited anything they thought might be worth fighting over. She was right, Catherine whispered. Margaret was always right, Harrison said with a sad smile. So she prepared. In this folder, you'll find evidence of Marcus's affair, dates, times, hotel receipts, witnesses, Simone Laurent's emails discussing strategy to replace you, Patricia's payments to Simone, $10,000 transferred 3 months ago to ensure loyalty. Catherine's head snapped up. Patricia paid Simone? To secure her cooperation in the divorce, yes. We have bank records. It's all documented. Harrison continued. You'll also find evidence of financial fraud. Marcus has been embezzling from Sullivan Technologies for 18 months. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but documented by our forensic accountants. He's stolen approximately $200,000, which he's used to fund his lifestyle with Simone. Expensive hotels, jewelry, the engagement ring he gave her. He's been stealing from the company I own, Catherine said slowly. Precisely. Which means you can fire him, file criminal charges, or hold it over him as leverage. Your choice. Harrison pulled out another document. Your grandmother also purchased several key assets specifically with you in mind. The Riverside Plaza, where Patricia Sullivan hosts her annual charity gala, is owned by a Chen Industries subsidiary, the country club where the Sullivan family holds their membership. Also Chen Industries, the private school Marcus's family has attended for 4 generations. The building is leased from a Chen Industries property trust. Catherine felt something uncurl in her chest. Not quite rage, but something colder, sharper. Justice. She thought of everything, Catherine breathed. She had 30 years to think, Harrison said, and she spent the last 6 months specifically planning for this moment. She knew Patricia would strike when you were most vulnerable, pregnant, grieving, isolated. She wanted to make sure you had every weapon you needed to fight back. He pulled out one final document. And this is the most important piece. Your grandmother established a foundation, the Chen Future Generations Foundation. $50 million in the endowment, specifically focused on supporting single mothers, domestic violence survivors, and women escaping abusive relationships. She wanted you to run it. Me? You. She believed that if anyone would understand the Foundation's mission, it would be you. And she believed that your experience with the Sullivans would make you the perfect advocate for women in similar situations. Catherine looked at all the documents spread across the desk. Evidence of betrayal, conspiracy, theft, but also evidence of love, protection, planning. Her grandmother had built her a fortress. What do I do now? Catherine asked. Harrison smiled. And it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of an attorney who'd spent 23 years watching a brilliant woman plan the perfect trap. Now, he said, we let them think they've won. We file a response to the divorce that looks desperate, poorly constructed, weak. We make them believe you're scrambling, failing, about to collapse. We give them enough rope to hang themselves. And then, Mrs. Sullivan, we spring the trap. At the moment of their greatest confidence, when Patricia is celebrating her victory and Marcus is planning his future with Simone, we reveal exactly who you are. And we destroy them so completely, they'll spend the rest of their lives wishing they'd protected you instead of attacking you. Catherine looked down at her belly, at the baby who would be born into this chaos, who would never know what it felt like to be powerless. How long? She asked. Patricia's annual charity gala is in 6 weeks. It's the social event of the season. 500 guests, media coverage, the Sullivan family's moment to shine. I suggest we let them shine right up until the moment we take away the sun. 6 weeks. Catherine would be due in 4 weeks. She'd have a newborn by the time of the gala. I'll have just given birth, she said. Which makes it perfect, Harrison replied. They'll think you're even more vulnerable, recovering from childbirth, exhausted, overwhelmed. They'll never see you coming. Catherine thought about Patricia screaming at her, about Marcus's cold indifference, about Simone's smug smile. She thought about her grandmother, brilliant and careful, spending 30 years building an empire while everyone thought she was just a bookkeeper clipping coupons. Let's do it, Catherine said. Harrison extended his hand. Welcome to Chen Industries, Mrs. Sullivan. Or should I say, Chairwoman Chen. Catherine shook his hand, feeling power flow between them like electricity. For now, she said. Mrs. Sullivan is fine. Let them keep thinking that's all I am. We'll correct them later. Catherine spent the first week after leaving the Sullivan estate in a hotel. Not expensive, but clean and safe. The Comfort Inn on Route 9, where she paid cash and registered under her maiden name. She needed to disappear, to let Marcus and Patricia believe she was scrambling, desperate. Let them look for her at shelters and cheap apartments. Let them call her phone and get voicemail. Let them think they'd broken her completely. In reality, Catherine spent that week in meetings. Meeting with Harrison to understand the full scope of her inheritance. $5.3 billion in liquid assets. Chen Industries valued at $18 billion, controlling shares in 27 companies. Real estate holdings in 15 countries. Meeting with Dr. Elizabeth Warren, her new OB/GYN at Mount Sinai Medical Center. Private rooms, the best care money could buy. Dr. Warren examined Catherine carefully, frowning at her blood pressure and stress markers. "You need to rest," Dr. Warren said firmly. "I know there's a lot happening in your life right now, but this baby needs you calm and healthy. Can you do that?" Catherine thought about Patricia's face, about the trap being set. "I can try," she said. Meeting with Jennifer Martinez, the attorney Harrison recommended for the divorce. Jennifer was 43, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for destroying opposing counsel in custody battles. "They're going to come at you hard," Jennifer said, reviewing Marcus's initial filing, claiming you're mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, unfit to have primary custody. Standard playbook for wealthy men trying to minimize child support. "What if I have evidence of infidelity, embezzlement, and conspiracy?" Catherine asked. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. "Then we have a very different case. Walk me through it." By the end of week 1, Catherine had a legal team, a medical team, and a plan. She'd also found an apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in Queens, close to where her grandmother had lived. Nothing flashy, nothing that would alert the Sullivans to her changed circumstances. She furnished it from IKEA, dressed in maternity clothes from Target, drove her Toyota. To anyone watching, and Patricia had definitely hired someone to watch, Catherine looked exactly like what they expected. A desperate pregnant woman, barely holding on. Her phone rang constantly. Marcus, calling to demand she sign the papers. Patricia, leaving venomous voicemails about how Catherine was destroying her grandchild's future with her stubbornness. Even Simone, texting helpful suggestions about how Catherine should gracefully step aside. Catherine ignored them all. At night, in her modest apartment, she read her grandmother's journals. Harrison had given her 12 leather-bound volumes, decades of thoughts and observations. On pages, Margaret Chen came alive. Brilliant, strategic, patient as stone. One entry from 1994 stood out. "People reveal their true nature when they think you're powerless. Let them. Watch, document. And when the moment comes, show them exactly what power looks like." Catherine underlined that passage, memorized it, made it her mantra. Week 2, Education and Team Assembly. Catherine gave birth on a Tuesday afternoon in the 2nd week, 3 weeks early, but Dr. Warren assured her that was normal for first pregnancies. Grace Margaret Chen Sullivan, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect. Catherine held her daughter in the private recovery room at Mount Sinai, tears streaming down her face. Grace had her grandmother's eyes, dark, knowing, already wise. "I promise you," Catherine whispered to her sleeping daughter, "you'll never be powerless. You'll never apologize for being strong. You'll never let anyone make you small." She'd sent a brief text to Marcus. "Baby born, girl, healthy. Will arrange visitation." His response came 3 hours later. Convenient timing. "My lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements. No congratulations, no questions about Catherine's health. No request to see his daughter." Simone texted next. "How much did the hospital bill cost? Must be devastating with no insurance. Marcus says you can give the baby up for adoption if you can't afford her. We'd be willing to adopt." Catherine stared at that message for a long time, the casual cruelty. The assumption that Catherine was so broken, so desperate that she'd give up her baby. She blocked Simone's number and turned back to Grace. 2 days later, Catherine was released from the hospital. A private car service, arranged by Harrison, took her home. A night nurse met her at the apartment, hired through Chen Industries' Executive Services Division. "Mrs. Sullivan," the nurse said warmly. "I'm Helen. I'll be helping you for the next 6 weeks while you recover. Don't worry about anything except healing and bonding with your baby." "I can't afford," Catherine started, then stopped. She could afford anything. That realization still felt surreal. While Helen managed Grace's feeding schedule and taught Catherine about newborn care, Catherine had other visitors. Catherine Zhao, Chief Financial Officer of Chen Industries, came to the apartment with a laptop and patient smile. "Your grandmother wanted you to understand the business," Catherine said. "Not just own it, understand it. So I'm here to teach you." Over the next 2 weeks, while Grace slept and Catherine recovered, she learned about quarterly earnings, stock options, hostile takeovers, and market manipulation. She learned about the dozen shell companies that hid Chen Industries' ownership of Sullivan Technologies. She learned about board structures, voting shares, and exactly how much power she wielded. "You could fire the entire Sullivan Technologies board tomorrow," Catherine Zhao explained. "You have that authority. The question is whether you want to use it now or wait." "Wait," Catherine said. "Let them feel secure. Let them think they're untouchable." Marcus Chen, no relation, head of Chen Industries' Private Investigation Division, came next. He was 60, former FBI, with eyes that missed nothing. "Your grandmother hired me 15 years ago," he said. "She wanted to make sure she always knew exactly what threats existed around you. We've been watching the Sullivans for 3 years." He showed Catherine photographs, recordings, documents. Marcus and Simone in hotel rooms. Patricia meeting with attorneys, discussing strategies to eliminate Catherine's influence. Financial transfers, emails, text messages, everything. "The affair started 18 months ago, exactly as Simone claimed," Marcus Chen said. "But what she didn't mention is that Patricia facilitated it. She introduced them deliberately at that company retreat. She saw Simone as someone she could control, someone who would be grateful and obedient, someone unlike you." Catherine looked at photos of her husband kissing another woman and felt nothing. The grief had burned out. Only cold calculation remained. "I need all of this documented," Catherine said. "Every detail, every date, everything that will hold up in court." "Already done," Marcus Chen said. "And there's more. Your husband's embezzlement? It's not 200,000. It's closer to 400,000. He's been hiding it in offshore accounts, planning to access it after the divorce. He thinks no one's watching. But you are. We always are." Week 3-4. Public emergence. 4 weeks after giving birth, Catherine started her transformation. Not drastically. Nothing that would alert the Sullivans. But she began working with a personal trainer, supposedly a friend from college, who agreed to help her get back in shape with home workout sessions. In reality, Daniela Rodriguez was one of Manhattan's top celebrity trainers, working with Catherine 3 times a week on a customized postpartum program. "We're not just losing baby weight," Daniela said. "We're building strength, power, confidence. When you walk into that gala, you'll move like someone who owns the room, because you will own the room, literally." Catherine hired a nutritionist, meal planning for new moms, who designed a program that was healthy, sustainable, and effective. The baby weight started coming off. 10 pounds in the first week, another 8 in the second. Not dangerously fast, but noticeable. She also started therapy, postpartum support, with Dr. Sarah Kim, a psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery. "You've been systematically abused," Dr. Kim said plainly in their first session. "Emotional, financial, psychological abuse." Patricia Sullivan is a textbook narcissist, and Marcus is what we call an enabler. They work together to break down your sense of self-worth over 6 years. We need to rebuild that. The therapy helped. Catherine talked about feeling invisible, about the slow erosion of her confidence, about believing she deserved the treatment she received. "You believed it because they were expert at making you believe it," Dr. Kim said. "But here's the truth. You were never the problem. You were the threat. Patricia recognized your intelligence, your capability, your potential, and she spent 6 years trying to neutralize you before you could become powerful enough to challenge her." "She failed," Catherine said. "Spectacularly," Dr. Kim agreed with a smile. By week 4, Catherine had lost 23 pounds. She was still 15 pounds heavier than her pre-pregnancy weight. But she felt stronger, more energetic, more like herself than she had in years. Grace was thriving, a happy, healthy baby who slept well and smiled easily. Helen, the night nurse, had become indispensable, giving Catherine the space to focus on her recovery and planning. And Catherine started attending events, small ones, carefully chosen. A charity luncheon for children's literacy. She donated $5,000 under her maiden name, Catherine Chen, attracting no attention. A fundraiser for postpartum depression research, another $5,000, this time introducing herself to other donors, making connections. A silent auction for pediatric cancer research, $10,000, and this time people noticed. "Catherine Chen?" A woman approached her at the silent auction. "I'm Emily Morrison. My family runs Morrison Properties. I don't think we've met." "I'm new to the charity circuit," Catherine said with a practiced smile. "My grandmother recently passed, and she was passionate about giving back. I'm trying to honor her legacy." Emily's eyes were sharp, assessing. "Chen, are you related to Margaret Chen by any chance?" Catherine's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression neutral. "She was my grandmother." Emily's entire demeanor shifted, warmer, more respectful. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. We worked together on several projects over the years. She never wanted recognition, but she changed countless lives." "She did," Catherine agreed quietly. "If you're interested in continuing her work," Emily said, "I chair several boards that could benefit from Chen family involvement. Would you be open to lunch sometime?" "I would," Catherine said. They exchanged cards. Catherine's listed her as Catherine Chen, Chen Future Generations Foundation, with Harrison's office as the contact address. That night, Catherine received a text from an unknown number. "Heard you met Emily Morrison. Well played. Watch what you say to her. She and Patricia Sullivan are acquainted." Harrison, Catherine smiled. Let the whispers start. Let people wonder who Catherine Chen was, why she was suddenly appearing at charity events with money to spend. Let Patricia hear the name Chen and never connect it to the powerless pregnant woman she'd screamed at a month ago. Week 5 to 6, strategic positioning. By week 5, Catherine had lost 31 pounds total. She was now 5 pounds lighter than her pre-pregnancy weight, and the intensive training with Daniela had transformed her body into something stronger, leaner, more powerful than she'd ever been. She started shopping, carefully, strategically, not at the obvious places where Sullivan family friends might see her, but at small boutiques at consignment shops that carried designer pieces. A midnight blue Armani dress for $400 at a consignment shop in Brooklyn. It fit perfectly, emphasizing her new figure while maintaining elegance. A pair of Louboutin heels, gently used, for $200. Real jewelry. Nothing flashy, but quality pieces. Small diamond studs, a simple necklace, a watch that looked expensive but not ostentatious. She changed her hair, found a stylist in Queens who transformed her lank, damaged pregnancy hair into something sleek and glossy. Not a dramatic change, but noticeable. Healthier, more polished. Marcus had called once to arrange visitation with Grace. Catherine had agreed immediately, cooperating fully, never mentioning money or the divorce papers. "You can see her Sundays, 2 to 5, Catherine said. "I'll have her ready." Marcus sounded surprised by her easy compliance. "Really? No fight?" "She's your daughter," Catherine said simply. "You have a right to see her." The first visitation, Marcus arrived at Catherine's modest Queens apartment, looking uncomfortable. Catherine answered the door in yoga pants and a t-shirt, Grace sleeping in her arms. "Here she is," Catherine said, passing Grace over carefully. "She's been fed. Diapers are in this bag. Call if you need anything." Marcus held his daughter awkwardly, clearly out of his depth. Behind him, Catherine saw Simone waiting in his BMW, scrolling through her phone. "Is Simone coming up?" Catherine asked neutrally. "No," Marcus said quickly. "I thought I should probably have time with Grace alone first." "That's probably wise," Catherine agreed. He left, and Catherine closed the door, waiting exactly 30 seconds before texting Harrison. "He doesn't suspect anything." Harrison's response? "Perfect. 2 weeks until the gala. Everything is ready." Catherine spent those final 2 weeks making strategic appearances. She attended a gallery opening, donated $15,000 to the Artist Collective. She was photographed talking to a city councilwoman, discussing arts funding. She attended a women's business networking event, introduced herself as Catherine Chen, entrepreneur and philanthropist. She gave a brief talk about her grandmother's legacy, about supporting women in business. People listened. People paid attention. The name Chen started circulating in the circles where Patricia Sullivan held court. And Patricia started hearing it. "Who is Catherine Chen?" Patricia asked Emily Morrison at a country club lunch. "I keep hearing that name." Emily shrugged. "New money, I think. Her grandmother recently passed. She's been making quite an impression at various charity events. Very generous, very polished. I'm trying to recruit her for the hospital board." Patricia made a dismissive sound. New money is always so desperate for attention. But Catherine noticed that Patricia started Googling, started asking questions, started trying to figure out who this Catherine Chen was and whether she posed any threat to the Sullivan family's social standing. She never made the connection, never realized that Catherine Chen and Catherine Sullivan were the same person. Why would she? The Catherine Sullivan she knew was a broken, overweight, desperate woman begging for scraps. Catherine Chen was poised, slim, wealthy, powerful. Completely different women, or so Patricia thought. Week 7 to 8. Final preparations. The Riverside Plaza Gala was scheduled for December 15th, Patricia Sullivan's annual charity event benefiting underprivileged youth. 500 guests, black tie, the social event of the season. Patricia had been planning it for months, and according to Chen Industries intelligence reports, she'd been gloating about it constantly. The divorce would be final by then. Marcus and Simone would attend as an engaged couple. Catherine would be frozen out, humiliated, forgotten. The perfect ending to Patricia's perfect plan. Catherine received her invitation the first week of December. It was addressed to Mrs. Catherine Chen at Harrison's office address. Patricia Sullivan cordially invites you to the annual Riverside Plaza Gala. Harrison called her immediately. She doesn't know. She doesn't know, Catherine confirmed. This is perfect. She's inviting you to your own execution without realizing you own the venue. Catherine looked at the invitation. Cream cardstock, gold lettering, elegant and expensive. The same invitation she'd helped Patricia design for the past 6 years, never receiving credit. Always just the invisible assistant. Send the RSVP, Catherine said. Catherine Chen, +1. +1? Harrison asked. You, Catherine said. I want my attorney there when everything burns down. The final 2 weeks before the gala passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine lost 3 more pounds, 34 total. She was now 8 pounds lighter than her pre-pregnancy weight, and Daniela had sculpted her into something powerful and elegant. She had a final dress fitting. Not the consignment Armani, that had been practice. For the gala, Catherine wore custom Valentino. Midnight blue silk that flowed like water, emphasizing every line of her transformed body. Not revealing, but undeniable, powerful. She hired a professional makeup artist and hairstylist for the night of the gala. Her hair would be up, elegant, emphasizing her cheekbones. Makeup natural, but perfect. The real diamonds came out. Not costume jewelry. Her grandmother's collection, held in trust for decades. A simple necklace worth $300,000. Earrings worth $150,000. Nothing ostentatious, but anyone who knew jewelry would recognize the quality. She practiced her walk, her posture, her expression. Not smiling. She wouldn't smile. Cool, calm, unreadable. The face of someone who held all the cards. Grace was safe. Helen would stay with her during the gala. Catherine had nursed her, kissed her, promised her, Mommy's going to make sure you grow up in a world where no one can make you small. I love you, baby girl. 2 days before the gala, Marcus called. I need you to sign the papers, he said without preamble. We've been generous enough, Catherine. This needs to end. I'll consider it, Catherine said neutrally. Consider it? You don't have a choice. I'll take you to court. You'll see me at your mother's gala, Catherine interrupted. We can discuss it then. She hung up before he could respond. That night, Harrison called with the final piece of the plan. We've informed the board of Sullivan Technologies that there will be an announcement at the gala. They've been told to attend. All 12 board members, including Marcus, will be in the room when you reveal yourself. Perfect, Catherine said. Are you ready for this? Harrison asked. Catherine thought about Patricia screaming at her, about Marcus's cold indifference, about Simone's smug smile, about her grandmother's letter. Show them what a Chen woman is made of. I've been ready my whole life, Catherine said. I just didn't know it until now. The night of December 15th arrived with clear skies and biting cold. Catherine dressed slowly, methodically, in her hotel suite at the Four Seasons. She'd checked in that afternoon, maintaining the fiction that she still lived in the modest Queen's apartment. The Valentino dress slid over her skin like silk armor. The diamonds settled against her throat like ice. The Louboutins added 3 inches to her height, making her feel 6 feet tall. She looked at herself in the floor-length mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the exhausted, overweight, beaten-down woman Patricia had screamed at. In her place stood someone who looked like she'd been born to rule boardrooms. Grace's photo sat on the dresser. Catherine kissed her fingers, pressed them to the photo. For you, she whispered. For every woman who's ever been made to feel small. Harrison arrived at 7 o'clock p.m. sharp, wearing a Tom Ford tuxedo. Mrs. Chen, he said with a slight bow, you look extraordinary. Let's go show them what extraordinary looks like, Catherine replied. They arrived at the Riverside Plaza at 7:30 p.m. The red carpet was already crowded with guests, Manhattan's elite in designer gowns and tuxedos, photographers snapping pictures, reporters calling out names. The car service pulled up. The door opened. Harrison stepped out first, then extended his hand. Catherine took it and emerged into the flash of 100 cameras. She walked slowly, deliberately, her hand resting lightly on Harrison's arm. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked with the calm confidence of someone who owned exactly where she stood. Because she did. The Riverside Plaza was owned by Chen Industries. She'd approved the renovation budget 2 weeks ago. Who is that? Someone in the crowd whispered. Catherine Chen, another voice answered. The philanthropist. Margaret Chen's granddaughter. More whispers. More cameras. Catherine ignored them all. She walked through the entrance into the ballroom, and the space took her breath away despite herself. Patricia had outdone herself. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across white marble floors. Ice sculptures flanked the entrance. Tables draped in gold silk surrounded a massive dance floor. A full orchestra played in one corner. Champagne fountains sparkled. White flowers, roses, peonies, orchids, covered every surface. It was spectacular. It was perfect. And Catherine owned every inch of it. Patricia stood near the entrance, greeting guests. She wore a burgundy gown that probably cost $50,000, diamonds at her throat and wrists. She looked powerful, regal, completely in her element. Marcus stood beside her in a tuxedo, Simone on his arm. Simone wore white, deliberately bridal, deliberately provocative. She whispered something to Marcus, and they both laughed. They hadn't seen Catherine yet. Harrison leaned close. Ready? Ready, Catherine confirmed. They walked forward, directly into Patricia's line of sight. Patricia turned, her social smile in place, ready to greet another donor, and froze. Her face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, shock, horror. Catherine? She whispered. Marcus turned, saw her. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. Simone's smile vanished. That's impossible. But Catherine just stood there, cool and calm and devastatingly beautiful, looking at them like they were strangers she'd never particularly liked. Patricia, Catherine said, her voice carrying, thank you so much for inviting me. Catherine Chen, +1. I believe we're on your guest list. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. You're Catherine Chen? Patricia finally managed. I am, Catherine said simply. But you were... I was Catherine Sullivan, Catherine said. Your daughter-in-law. The woman you screamed at 6 weeks ago. The woman you tried to destroy. The entrance area had gone silent. Guests were turning, staring, sensing drama. I don't understand, Patricia whispered. You will, Catherine said. She smiled then, cold, precise, devastating. Enjoy your gala, Patricia. It's lovely. I especially appreciate the ice sculptures. Very fitting for the theme. She walked past Patricia into the ballroom, leaving the Sullivan family standing frozen in her wake. Behind her she heard Marcus say, What the hell just happened? And Patricia, voice shaking, Find out who she really is. Find out right now. But it was too late. Catherine was already moving through the crowd toward the stage where her future waited. The next 48 hours. By morning, Catherine Chen was everywhere. The video of Patricia screaming at a pregnant Catherine had gone viral. 15 million views in 12 hours. News outlets picked it up. Billionaire heiress confronts abusive in-laws, ran on CNN. The Sullivan scandal, how a family lost everything, made the front page of the New York Times. The financial news was even more brutal. Chen Industries chairwoman reveals ownership of Sullivan Technologies. Family leadership ousted for fraud sent the stock markets buzzing. Business Insider ran a profile. Margaret Chen's granddaughter, the quiet billionaire who hid in plain sight. Catherine woke up to 247 missed calls, 1,034 text messages, and 17 interview requests from major media outlets. She ignored them all and fed her daughter. Grace nursed peacefully, oblivious to the firestorm raging outside their penthouse. Catherine sat in the custom rocking chair by the window, looking out at Central Park covered in December snow, and felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Peace. Harrison called at 9 a.m. "Have you seen the news?" "Some of it," Catherine said. "The board of Sullivan Technologies held an emergency meeting at 6 this morning. They've officially ratified your decisions. Marcus is terminated, Patricia is removed from all positions, and they're requesting a full forensic audit of the past 3 years." "Good. Make sure every stolen dollar is recovered and donated to the foundation." "Already in progress." "We've also received 43 calls from domestic violence organizations requesting partnerships, 67 from women asking for help leaving abusive situations, and 216 from media outlets wanting to tell your story." Catherine closed her eyes. 216 women. 216 stories like hers. "Connect the DV organizations with the Foundation's director," Catherine said. "Give them whatever resources they need. For the women calling for help, set up a hotline. Staff it 24/7. No one gets turned away. And the media? One statement. I'll write it myself. After that, no interviews, no appearances. The work speaks for itself." "Understood." Catherine spent the morning writing, not for the media, but for herself. Processing, grieving, celebrating. She wrote about the woman she'd been 6 weeks ago, scared, pregnant, convinced she was worthless. She wrote about her grandmother, who'd spent 30 years building power while pretending to be powerless. She wrote about Grace, who would grow up knowing her mother had fought back. At noon, she released a single statement through Harrison's office. "6 weeks ago, I was a pregnant woman being screamed at and told I was worthless. Today, I'm the chairwoman of a multi-billion-dollar company and the founder of a foundation dedicated to helping women in similar situations. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about survival, resilience, and the power of refusing to accept someone else's narrative about your worth. My grandmother taught me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up every single time. It's about building power quietly, protecting yourself strategically, and waiting for the right moment to show the world who you really are. To every woman who's been made to feel small, you're not small. You're not worthless. You're not too much or not enough. You're exactly who you need to be, and your power is waiting for you to claim it. To the Sullivan family, I hope you learn from this. I hope you grow. I hope you become people who build others up instead of tearing them down. And to my daughter, Grace, this is your legacy. Not the money, not the companies, not the power. Your legacy is knowing that no one can take your worth from you. Ever. Thank you, Catherine Chen. Within an hour, the statement had been shared 2 million times. Catherine Chen trended globally. Women shared their own stories of abuse, survival, transformation. Catherine turned off her phone and spent the afternoon with Grace. The Sullivan family destruction. The fallout for the Sullivan family was swift and brutal. Marcus was fired from Sullivan Technologies with cause, no severance, no benefits, no references. The embezzlement charges were filed by the board. He faced up to 10 years in prison if convicted. His attorneys tried to negotiate, offering to return the money, accept probation, anything to avoid trial. But the board, embarrassed by the scandal and desperate to distance themselves, refused. "Make an example," Jennifer Park had said in the emergency board meeting. "Show Chen Industries that we won't tolerate this. Show the public that we take this seriously." Patricia lost everything. Her position on the foundation board, her country club membership, revoked for conduct unbecoming, her social standing demolished by the viral videos. Even her beloved estate, the mortgage, it turned out, had balloon payments coming due. And the Chen Industries-owned bank declined to restructure. She'd built her entire identity on being a Sullivan, on social power, on the ability to make or break people with a word. All of it vanished in 48 hours. Her friends stopped calling. Her charity boards asked her to resign. Even her own siblings, Marcus's aunts and uncles, distanced themselves, claiming they'd had no idea about Patricia's behavior. Within a week, Patricia and Marcus's father, Gerald Sullivan, quietly filed for separation. Gerald, who'd spent 35 years married to Patricia, had been horrified by the public exposure. He moved into a hotel, then into a condo in Florida, and made it clear through his attorney that he wanted nothing to do with the scandal. Patricia was left alone in the estate she could no longer afford, watching everything she'd built crumble. Simone disappeared. She'd lost her job at Sullivan Technologies, her apartment, ironically in a Chen Industries-owned building, and her reputation. She moved back to her parents' house in Connecticut, deleted all social media, and effectively vanished from public life. The last Catherine heard, Simone was working at her father's insurance agency, keeping her head down, rebuilding from nothing. Marcus's collapse. 3 weeks after the gala, Marcus sent Catherine a letter. Not through attorneys, those had all abandoned him when the money dried up, but hand-delivered to Harrison's office. Harrison brought it to Catherine's penthouse, handling it like it might explode. "You don't have to read it," he said. "I know," Catherine replied. But she did anyway. "Catherine, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you anymore. But I need you to know the truth, even if it's too late to matter. I was weak. I let my mother control me my entire life. She told me you weren't good enough, that you were holding me back, that you'd leave me eventually. She made me believe that loving you was a mistake, that wanting the marriage we built was settling. I was wrong. She was wrong. Watching you at that gala, watching you stand there, so strong and powerful and completely sure of yourself, I saw what I destroyed. I saw the woman I fell in love with, the woman I promised to cherish. And I realized I'd spent 6 years trying to break her because my mother told me to. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm just asking you to let Grace know someday that I loved her. That even when I was at my worst, even when I was betraying her mother, I wanted her. I know I have no right to her. I know I'll be lucky if she speaks to me when she's 18. But if you could just let her know that her father wasn't always a monster, that he was once a man who loved her mother and then made choices that destroyed everything good in his life. Maybe that would be enough. I'm sorry. For everything. For not being strong enough to protect you from my mother. For not being the man you deserved. For throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. I hope you're happy. I hope Grace is healthy. I hope you build a life so beautiful that you forget I was ever part of it. Marcus. Catherine read the letter twice, then set it aside. What do you want to do with it? Harrison asked. File it, Catherine said. Grace might want to read it someday. When she's old enough to understand that people can be both victims and perpetrators. That weakness can be as destructive as cruelty. And Marcus? Visitation? Catherine looked at Grace, sleeping in her bassinet, her tiny fists curled under her chin. Supervised visitation, once a month. If he stays sober, stays out of trouble, completes therapy, we can revisit. But for now, I need to know she's safe. Fair enough, Harrison said. He paused. For what it's worth, Catherine, you're handling this with more grace than anyone could expect. I'm not doing it for him, Catherine said. I'm doing it because my daughter deserves the chance to know her father, even if he's flawed. Even if he failed us. She deserves to make her own choices about that relationship. She looked out at Central Park, at the snow falling softly over the city. I won't let his mistakes define her future, she said quietly. That's the difference between me and Patricia. She turned Marcus's life into an extension of her own ego, her own needs, her own fears. I won't do that to Grace. She's her own person. She'll choose her own path. Your grandmother would be proud, Harrison said. Catherine smiled, tears forming. I hope so. 6 months later. By June, the dust had settled. Sullivan Technologies, now officially operating as a Chen Industries subsidiary, was thriving under new leadership. The board had appointed Jennifer Park as CEO, and she'd implemented sweeping reforms, stronger financial oversight, ethics training, whistleblower protections. The company's stock had initially dropped 20% after the scandal, but had recovered and grown. Investors loved the transparency, the accountability, the clear leadership. Marcus had pled guilty to embezzlement and received 3 years in prison, eligible for parole after 18 months. He'd repaid every stolen dollar, liquidating his personal assets, selling his car, his belongings, everything he'd bought with stolen money. Patricia had left New York. Catherine heard through Harrison that she'd moved to Arizona, living with a distant cousin, working part-time at a library. The estate had been foreclosed on. All her jewelry, art, furniture, sold at auction. The viral videos followed her everywhere. She'd tried using an alias, but someone always recognized her. That's the woman who screamed at her pregnant daughter-in-law. She'd become a cautionary tale, a symbol of how cruelty could backfire spectacularly. Catherine felt no satisfaction in Patricia's suffering, just a quiet acknowledgement that justice had been served. Simone sent a letter apologizing, asking for nothing, just saying she'd learned and grown. Catherine never responded. Some things didn't need a response. The Chen Future Generations Foundation had helped 847 women in 6 months, provided housing, legal aid, therapy, job training, childcare. Catherine reviewed every case personally, saw her own story reflected in different versions: women trapped, women scared, women believing they were worthless until someone showed them they weren't. She gave speeches at domestic violence conferences, not about herself, but about the systems that enabled abuse, the social structures that made women vulnerable, the ways power could be wielded for protection instead of harm. She testified before Congress about financial abuse, about how abusers used money as a weapon. Legislation was pending. Stronger protections for victims, harsher penalties for financial manipulation. And Grace grew. 6 months old now, laughing, grabbing, recognizing her mother's face. Catherine spent every morning with her, nursing, playing, reading board books and silly voices. Marcus saw her once a month at a supervised visitation center. He was sober, in therapy, trying. Catherine watched through the one-way glass as he held Grace awkwardly, clearly loving her, clearly broken by what he'd lost. She felt pity for him. Not forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever. But pity. He'd been Patricia's victim too, in a different way, molded since childhood to value his mother's approval over his own judgment, taught that love was conditional, that power meant control, that weakness was unforgivable. He'd made terrible choices. He'd hurt Catherine beyond measure. But he'd also been shaped by forces he never learned to resist. Catherine wouldn't excuse him, but she could understand him. And understanding, she'd learned, was the first step toward healing. 1 year later, Catherine stood in the newly opened Chen Community Center in the Bronx. 50,000 square feet of services for women and families. Job training, legal aid, therapy, childcare, even a small medical clinic. A reporter from The Times had asked for an interview to mark the 1-year anniversary of the Sullivan scandal. Catherine had agreed. Not for herself, but for the women who needed to hear that escape was possible. A year ago, the reporter asked, "You were pregnant, financially dependent, being screamed at by your in-laws. Today, you're running a multi-billion-dollar company and a foundation that's helped thousands of women. How does it feel?" Catherine looked around the community center, at the women using computers to apply for jobs, at the children in the bright, safe daycare, at the therapists helping survivors heal. "It feels like purpose," she said. "For 30 years, my grandmother built wealth while pretending to be ordinary. She taught me that power isn't about being seen, it's about being effective. It's not about revenge, it's about change." "Do you regret marrying Marcus Sullivan?" Catherine considered. Grace was in the playroom, laughing with other babies, healthy and happy and loved. "I regret how it ended," she said carefully. "I regret the pain. But I don't regret Grace. And I don't regret learning that I was stronger than anyone, including myself, believed." "What would you say to women in situations like the one you escaped?" Catherine looked directly at the camera. "You're not stuck. You're not worthless. You're not too broken to heal. I know it doesn't feel that way. I know you're scared. I know leaving feels impossible." She took a breath. "But I also know that you're stronger than you think. That your worth isn't determined by people who can't see it. That you deserve safety, respect, love, real love, not the conditional kind that evaporates when you're vulnerable. And I know that somewhere there's help waiting. A friend, a shelter, an organization, someone who will believe you and support you and remind you that you're not alone." She smiled. "You're not alone. That's the most important thing. You're not alone." The interview ended. Catherine went to the playroom, scooped up Grace, held her close. "Mama," Grace said, one of her first words. "Yes, baby," Catherine whispered. "Mama's here. Mama's always here." That night, back at the penthouse, Catherine pulled out her grandmother's letter. She'd read it 100 times, but tonight she needed it again. Show them what a Chen woman is made of. She'd shown them. She'd shown Patricia that cruelty had consequences. She'd shown Marcus that betrayal destroyed more than just marriages. She'd shown the world that power could be used for protection instead of harm. But most importantly, she'd shown herself that she was never as powerless as they'd made her believe. Catherine tucked the letter back into its frame, hung it on her office wall where she'd see it every day. Then she went to Grace's nursery, stood watching her daughter sleep. "You'll grow up knowing your worth," Catherine whispered. "You'll grow up strong and confident and unafraid. You'll never let anyone make you small." Grace stirred, smiled in her sleep. "And when you're older," Catherine continued, "I'll tell you about your great-grandmother Margaret, about how she walked away from a fortune to protect herself, then spent 30 years building it back while everyone thought she was just a bookkeeper. About how she taught me that real power is quiet, strategic, patient. About how the Chen women don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive. And when the pressure releases, we spring back stronger." Catherine kissed her daughter's forehead, turned off the light, closed the door softly. In the living room, she poured herself a glass of wine, stood at the window overlooking Central Park. Somewhere in Arizona, Patricia was probably awake too, thinking about everything she'd lost. Somewhere in prison, Marcus was probably lying awake, grieving the life he destroyed. Somewhere, Simone was probably trying to forget the woman she'd been. And Catherine felt nothing. No triumph, no revenge, no satisfaction. Just peace. She'd survived. She'd fought back. She'd protected her daughter. And tomorrow she'd wake up and do it again. Running Chen Industries, funding the foundation, helping women who needed what she'd needed a year ago. Hope, support, proof that escape was possible. This was her legacy. Not the money, not the power, not the spectacle of the gala where she had destroyed her enemies. Her legacy was every woman who saw her story and found the courage to leave. Every child who grew up in a home without abuse. Every life that changed because someone had shown them that power could be used for protection. Margaret Chen had built an empire while everyone thought she was nothing. Catherine Chen had used that empire to show the world that women who've been broken can rebuild themselves stronger than anyone imagined. And Grace Chen would grow up knowing that her worth was inherent, unshakable, eternal. That was the real victory. Not revenge, not justice, not even freedom. Understanding that she'd always had the power. She just needed to claim it. Epilogue. 5 years later. Grace turned 5 on a sunny Saturday in June. Catherine threw her a party at the penthouse. Small, intimate, just Grace's preschool friends and a few adults. Grace wore a princess dress, her choice, and a superhero cape, also her choice. She had her grandmother's eyes, her mother's smile, and a confidence that made Catherine's heart ache with pride. "Mama, look!" Grace called, showing off a painting she'd made. "It's you and me and great-grandma." 3 figures, holding hands, surrounded by flowers. Crude but beautiful. "It's perfect," Catherine said, hugging her daughter close. Marcus came to visit that afternoon. Supervised still, but the supervision was lighter now. He'd completed his prison sentence, finished his therapy, found work as a construction manager. He lived modestly, paid his child support faithfully, and saw Grace twice a month. He'd never be the father he should have been. But he was trying, and Catherine respected the effort. "Happy birthday, Gracie," Marcus said, handing her a wrapped present. Grace opened it carefully, a book about strong women in history. Catherine noted that Marcus had clearly put thought into it. "Thank you, Daddy." Grace hugged him. Catherine watched them together, felt that familiar ache of what could have been, what never was, what never would be. But also gratitude that Grace had a father who was trying to be better. After Marcus left, Catherine and Grace curled up on the couch with a new book. "Mama, will I be a strong woman too?" Grace asked. "You already are," Catherine said. "Want to know a secret?" Grace nodded eagerly. "Your great-grandmother was one of the strongest women who ever lived. She built an enormous company while everyone thought she was just a quiet lady. And she taught me that strength isn't about being loud or scary. It's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone take it away." "Like you," Grace said. "Like me," Catherine agreed. "And someday, like you." They read together until Grace fell asleep, her head on Catherine's shoulder, the book open to a page about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Catherine looked around the penthouse, the home she'd built, the life she'd created, the future she was giving her daughter. 5 years ago, she'd been pregnant and powerless, being screamed at in a mansion she didn't own. Today, she owned the mansion. She'd bought it at foreclosure and converted it into a transitional housing facility for domestic violence survivors. 5 years ago, she'd believed she was worthless. Today, she ran a company valued at $23 billion and a foundation that had helped over 4,000 women escape abuse. 5 years ago, she'd thought her story was ending. Today, she knew it had just begun. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Park, now CEO of Sullivan Technologies. "Board meeting next week. We're announcing record profits and our partnership with the state to create job training programs for DV survivors. Margaret would be proud. You should be too." Catherine smiled, typed back, "She would. I am." Another text, this one from Harrison. "The governor wants to honor you at next month's domestic violence awareness event. Will you accept?" Catherine looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storms her mother had weathered to give her this calm. "Yes, but only if we highlight the women the foundation has helped." "This isn't about me." "Understood. Your grandmother raised you well." Catherine set down her phone, gathered Grace in her arms, carried her to bed. As she tucked her daughter in, she whispered the words Margaret Chen had written 5 years ago. "The Chen women don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive. And when the pressure releases, we spring back stronger than anyone thought possible." Grace mumbled in her sleep, smiled, safe and loved. And Catherine Chen, former victim, current billionaire, eternal survivor, turned off the light and walked toward whatever future waited, knowing that she'd already won the only battle that mattered, the battle to know her own worth. And no one, not Patricia, not Marcus, not anyone, could ever take that away again.